Alright, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen of the YouTube world? I finally did it. After so long, I watched the Avatar: The Last Airbender live action movie. I finally did it so you guys didn't have to. After recently revisiting Avatar: The Last Airbender for the making of my Avatar Iceberg video, check it out if you haven't already. Link is in the description. Cheap plug, I know, but yo, go check it out. Go check it out. Okay, you're back? Okay, cool. I decided to finally watch The Last Airbender movie after putting it off for years and years. Of course, I was a huge Avatar fanatic growing up, like most of the children of the world at the time, and I never wanted to watch the movie because of the bad reviews it had. Everybody said it was so bad and garbage, and I was like, oh no, this is not gonna taint my experience with Avatar, so I'm never gonna watch it. But I did. I finally did it and I watched it. I gave in and I watched it. So, is it as bad as everyone says? Let's talk about it. Alright, big reveal time. It's bad. It's really bad. And I'm not gonna talk about the terrible effects or the brain dead mispronunciation of names, nor am I gonna talk about this really dumb Star Wars inspired opening crawl, because these things have already been talked about to death. What I have for you today is the 7 key main points that made this movie, The Last Airbender, a failure. Yes, the big elephant in the room, the racial casting. This topic was the biggest cause for concern during the making of this film and was the biggest controversy to come out of the entire movie. Yes, even bigger than the fact that the entire movie was garbage was the casting. Let's take a look at the main cast in the original Avatar: The Last Airbender series. Here we have a cast of uniquely diverse characters, and it doesn't even stop with the main cast, as each nation is based on a different racial group. And now, drumroll please, here is the main cast for The Last Airbender movie. Notice anything? Yeah, you see it. They're actually all white, with the exception being Zuko, who was actually supposed to be played by Jesse McCartney, who is actually a white male. So all the main characters were supposed to be white. We go from this world of completely diverse characters and nationalities to a completely whitewashed main cast. What makes this even more insane and ridiculous is the fact that Zuko was supposed to be white when the rest of the Fire Nation is of brown Indian descent. So that means that M. Night Shyamalan wanted only his main talking characters to be white and the rest of the characters to be of other descent to include diversity. That is crazy, even for 2010. I mean, was the plan for Toph to be white? It's so crazy, it's like if John Cena was chosen to play Liu Kang in the new Mortal Kombat movie. This goes to further prove the old cliche that Hollywood would much rather have a completely whitewashed main cast instead of having anything that resembles some sort of diversity. When you look back, this movie began production around 2008 to 2009. During that time, there were a lot of big box office movies that were beginning to challenge the old trope of having a completely whitewashed main cast. And the director M. Night Shyamalan had a chance to do that with The Last Airbender. Even if the story sucked, which it did, I'll get more into that later, the movie had a chance to be remembered for having one of the most diverse and unique main casts of characters that Hollywood has ever seen. Do you know how cool it would have been to see all these races and ethnic groups being portrayed on the big screen? It's insane because Shyamalan literally had all the ethnic groups already laid out for him in the original series. All he had to do was copy and paste the groups to the movie, but the movie didn't do that, instead opting to have a complete whitewashed main cast, and it caused controversy. This is perhaps the biggest glaring issue with this film from the beginning. Right from Aang's first appearance, you can tell straight away that this is a kid who has no acting experience whatsoever, and he has been thrusted in to play the main character of a blockbuster action-filled summer movie. He was doomed from the beginning even before he took to the big screen. Listen to this excerpt of how Shyamalan made the decision to go with Noah Ringer as Aang. He states, "This kid has the right vibe. He's really raw as an actor, but he's got the right essence." Shyamalan then continues by saying, "This is a kid who's homeschooled, like a monk, shaves his head like Aang, is totally into martial arts like Aang, and has the kindest heart of a human being you'll ever meet." You know what Shyamalan didn't mention there? Acting. This poor kid Noah Ringer had no experience at all, so it is basically like they got a D-list actor to play the main character. And it's not just Noah Ringer who's a bad actor in this film. We have Nicola Peltz as Katara, who has had a major role in the Transformers series, and it's mind-blowing because she's not a particularly great actress. Her talking scenes throughout the course of the movie are dreadful and feel so fake at times. The delivery is just not there. Oh, and don't get me started on Jack Rathbone playing Sokka. Are you the Avatar Aang? Head ass. His delivery of lines are just as boring as the rest of the main cast, even with his experience coming from playing in the Twilight movie series. Adding to these three main abysmal casting decisions is a crew of lifeless, forgettable, and boring minor characters that I don't even care to mention about. It's insane to me how they couldn't even get three good actors to play their main three characters, Aang, Sokka, and Katara. Those three literally take up 90% of the film and are played by D-list actors. Anyways, I digress. I'm just going to show you some quick clips of their terrible acting and facial expressions on display.
There are teachers.
While we're on the topic of acting, I do want to give credit to Dev Patel who played Zuko and Sean Tubb who played Uncle Iroh. The performances done by these two are the only good and standouting performances in the entire movie. The two have good chemistry and bounce off of each other seamlessly during their scenes, even with the terrible dialogue that they have been given. Let's dive into the setting of The Last Airbender. It's always hard to bring a 2D animated show to life and make it look believable in live action. For audiences, it is so much easier to suspend your disbelief when watching a 2D cartoon, anime, or film. There has been a countless number of 2D live action adaptations failing. Examples range from the 2017 live action adaptation Death Note to 2019's horrendous attempt at making a good live action Lion King movie, or even stemming as far back as 2009 with Dragon Ball Evolution. There are many more examples of failed live action movies due to the hard nature of transferring a 2D film to a live action movie, and unfortunately for fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender, it also failed when moving to the big screen. The hardest part about making the transition from 2D to completely 3D is getting the look and feel right of the original 2D animation. Right away in The Last Airbender, just by looking at the Southern Water Tribe or any of the Earth Kingdom villages, you can tell that the entire series does not feel like a real place of fiction where people are living and breathing. It completely lacks the lively feeling of a real village. It feels like a set. Let's look at HBO's biggest show of all time, Game of Thrones. Obviously, we as an audience know that it is completely fiction. However, each town and village feel like a real place where real people are living. With Game of Thrones, we are able to suspend our disbelief, while in The Last Airbender, we can't stop looking at it as just another movie. A perfect example of this failed setting is the costumes. While watching this film, I knew right away that the costumes were bad, but I couldn't exactly tell why they were bad until it clicked. The glaring issue here is that the costumes look like costumes. The clothing does not look like something someone would actually wear. It doesn't look like someone is wearing an outfit, it just feels like they're wearing a costume. These costumes look like they're from the original Wizard of Oz. The costumes look lifeless, boring, dull, and they frankly don't even look like they've been worn. This idea of having clothes that look like costumes is not new. This is how movie costumes were made a very long time ago. But for 2010, this is simply not acceptable. Really quickly, I do also want to mention that the score is really bad. While the original had Asian war-inspired themes, the movie opts to have action movie music, and it simply just doesn't work for the Avatar world. Finally, the last issue with the setting in The Last Airbender is the bending technique and fight scenes. Part of what made bending in the original Avatar: The Last Airbender series so memorable is that the bending was completely based on real-life martial arts. Each element had its own unique and original martial arts fighting style. For example, water bending is based off of Tai Chi, earth bending is based on Hung Gar, fire bending is based on Northern Shaolin, and finally, airbending took inspiration from Baggia. As one can easily tell, there was a real effort and care into making the bending styles in the original series. Now, taking a closer look at some of the bending techniques in the movie is a different story. It completely looks like someone just watched the original series and lightly tried to copy that on the big screen. Many motions feel outright pointless and feel like they serve no real purpose and are just someone flailing their arms around randomly, while in the show, every motion happened with a purpose. Just look at the differences in how Aang bends air in the movie versus the show. I'll be the first to admit, I actually don't completely hate the fighting scenes in this movie. I think in any other action movie they would work and come off as decent fight scenes. The problem is that in itself is the problem. The fights don't feel like Avatar fights in the slightest. There is very little use of bending, and when bending is used, it is often slow, and it just looks stupid. On the other hand, when there is no bending and it's just strictly hand-to-hand combat, it feels like any other action movie you can find anywhere else. Maybe in a John Wick movie, or maybe even in the Fast and Furious franchise. The point being that the combat just simply doesn't matter. And that is a big missed opportunity. Most of the fights in the original are simply breathtaking. One of my favorites being the fight titled Aang and Team Avatar vs Zuko and June, in the Book 1 episode titled Batu of the Water Tribe. Every motion in this fight, particularly between Aang and Zuko, means something. From every little evasion trick that Aang does and every little fiery punch that Zuko throws. It's an amazing fight scene that I would love to dive deeper into at another time. But compare this fight from the animation to the one-on-one fight between the two in the latter part of the movie, and you can easily see the difference. The fight in the movie is forgettable because the motions don't matter, while the fight in the show is a masterclass showing. This video is sponsored by me. If you made it this far into the video, please subscribe, like, comment, anything to promote this video. I appreciate it so much. And yeah, let's get back to the video. This is something that going into the movie I thought would work, but shame on me for even remotely thinking that. You would imagine that a blockbuster summer of 2010 movie with a budget of $150 million, directed and written by an accredited director, M. Night Shyamalan, would be a very well directed movie, but it's not. Unfortunately, this movie is filled with awkward cuts and transitions, weird and pointless dialogue that adds nothing to the movie, and the weirdest camera angles. A perfect example of this is right here. This scene is the big reveal that Aang ran away from his home and doesn't know any other elements besides air. And what is supposed to be a huge moment of doubt for the audience is just a weird camera angle that the audience can't take their eyes off of. Literally, all they had to do was not be so zoomed into their faces and show something else. This scene goes back and forth between the talking heads and facial expressions, and it just falls flat and feels so awkward. Another example of weird directing is right here. When Aang tells Katara that he knows he has to go to the Northern Air Temple, and Aang asks Katara to talk to Sokka for him. And then we get this super weird cut to Sokka's face talking to Katara about Aang while Aang is in the background bending. Why couldn't the scene just be Aang talking to both of them about going to the Northern Air Temple? Why did it need to be this needlessly convoluted messenger conversation? A bit later on in the middle of the night, Aang leaves Sokka and Katara, and look at how telegraphed this scene appears. As soon as Aang hops onto Appa, Katara and Sokka get right up at Aang and just sit there. They just look at him. This scene feels so fake in its delivery. There are so many examples of weird cuts, fade outs, and editing that make this movie so impossible to watch. Look at this infamously bad scene from the movie. It takes 5 to 6 earthbenders making pointless motions that don't feel connected to move one simple 5-pound rock. Whoever made this decision simply needs to be fired. This scene is exactly what this movie is remembered for. Being a laughingstock. This is another perfect example of something that audiences should not have to worry about with a movie that has a budget of $150 million and has a seasoned director. If you know anything about storytelling, you know the importance of payoffs and impact. Payoffs are the moment that make you feel satisfied, like a big villain dying at the end of a season, and impact are the moments that make you care. If the writers can't make an audience care, then scenes will have little to no impact. This movie is littered with no payoffs and failed moments of impact. No moment of impact is as bad as Zuko explaining his family history to Aang in the latter part of the movie. The movie clearly tries to attempt to recreate the magic that happened in the animation. In the original show, this is a big moment for Zuko, where we as an audience get a better glimpse of who Zuko is and all the troubles that come with being the Fire Lord's son. All of the struggle that he has endured, and now we can see why he is so determined to chase the Avatar, and we care for him. However, in the movie, this just isn't the case. It feels like this scene was squeezed into the film with the hope of getting some sympathy for Zuko, and it does nothing for anyone. Looking at payoff in this film, there is one particular original plotline in the movie that we have to look at. Throughout the course of the film, there is a huge emphasis on Aang fully accepting and embracing his role as the Avatar. There is even a ceremony that isn't in the original show. For the ceremony to be complete, civilians bowed to Aang and he simply bows back. Early on in the movie, we see Aang running away from this ceremony right after the civilians bow down to him. He runs from his destiny and responsibility. The movie then carries on with moments of Aang showing regret for abandoning the world. The audience is supposed to feel sympathy for Aang and all that has been put on him at such a young age. It is supposed to be a journey, an adventure where Aang eventually comes to terms and accepts his role that he couldn't all those years ago. It isn't until the Northern Water Tribe is under siege by the Fire Nation and Aang talks to the magical dragon spirit. Yes, there's a magical spirit dragon for some reason, I don't know. Anyways, he talks to this dragon and metaphorically he accepts his destiny by fighting back in the Avatar state and defending the Northern Water Tribe from the Fire Nation. Finally, to end the movie, we get the quote-unquote payoff moment, with the civilians bowing down to Aang, and now he is ready to bow back and accept his responsibilities as the Avatar. There is even some over-the-top music to let the audience know that this is an important moment. But by the end, through all of this moment just feels flat and feels anticlimactic. It felt like the movie was trying to tell the audience that this is an important moment instead of the audience being able to just feel the importance of the moment. It just goes to show you can't force big moments in storytelling. One of the undeniable biggest problems that sticks out like a sore thumb during the viewing of this movie is the pacing. Avatar: The Last Airbender Book 1 had a total of 20 episodes, running for a total of 440 minutes or almost 7.5 total hours. Condensing this into an almost 100-minute movie is no easy task whatsoever. This movie was doomed to fail just on that alone. We have to keep in mind that one of the most beautiful things about the original series is that it's an episodic adventure. Team Avatar goes to a new place almost every single episode. While that formula works excellently for a 20-episode television show, it doesn't work for a movie, and it shows terribly. Another problem with turning Avatar into a movie is that with the show, the audience gradually falls in love with the cast over time. Zuko is the perfect example of this. He has one of the greatest redemption arcs in all of media. Book 1 is a crucial part of Zuko's redemption arc. Book 1 is the showing of all the terrible things that Zuko has to go through, and in the movie there is none of that. There is simply no time to devote to showing Zuko's struggles in full light, and as an audience we end up just not caring. Even with these problems, the movie still could have been a lot better with some much needed better pacing. For example, they condensed the entire subplot of Haru's village into 5 minutes. Yes, I'm a nerd so I counted. When having this village only shown for 5 minutes, why should anyone care? Contrast this to the 20-minute episode that was given to Haru's village in the first book and you see the difference. In the show we had time to connect to Haru and care about him. We got to see how the Fire Nation treats the village, we got to see the effects of war in the prison camp, and we got to see a hopeless village struggling for survival under the Fire Nation's tyranny. But in the movie, this is all we got.
He was bending tiny stones at us from behind a tree. It really hurt.
Yeah, just a kid throwing rocks at a Fire Nation soldier and it makes him mad. This is ridiculously dumb and childish. The audience never even learns Haru's name in the film. That is how condensed the movie really was. Adding to that, there is also a huge plethora of scenes that feel rushed to make the movie shorter. Look here, we have a scene that is supposed to be a moment of hope, where Aang finally meditates into the spirit world after being escorted by Katara, Sokka, and Yue. Katara opts to stay behind, staying with Aang. Sokka and Yue reluctantly agree and decide to get back to defend the people of the Northern Water Tribe. There is not a moment to breathe as Katara gives a pointless monologue about caring about Aang, and then Zuko pops in right into scene to foil the plans. This moment really felt like it needed time to breathe and really exist in the moment for it to feel impactful, but instead, like much of the rest of the movie, this was rushed. We finally made it to the story. Can you believe that I've been tearing this movie apart for this long and I haven't even remotely begun to touch the story? Anyways, here I'm just gonna point out all the things that made absolutely no sense to me, and really shows why M. Night Shyamalan should have never have touched this movie in the first place. Katara and Sokka's grandmother says that the Fire Nation wants to capture Aang, because the Fire Nation doesn't want to live among the spirits. What does this mean exactly? The audience never learns what the spirits are, so why should anyone care about the spirits? It just doesn't make sense from a logical standpoint. Look here, this is an earthbending village that has been imprisoned by the Fire Nation and has lost the will to fight. It is only after Aang gives a heroic speech that the earthbenders are willing to fight. This is really stupid. First off, the earthbenders have Earth right below them so they can fight back at any time they want, but they're just not because reasons. Secondly, Katara is the one to stand up to the Fire Nation in the show to act as a big moment for her character to show courage and resilience. But here we have Aang do it because he's the main character, and that's it. Also, here it is revealed that the Avatar cannot have a family, and Aang is really upset by this. Like, they stretch this out, like they stress it. But Roku had a family in the show, so what was the need for this in the movie? It made no sense. Another thing that made me want to pound my head against the table was every single time the movie referred to Fire Lord Ozai as Sire. It is so annoying. Just call him Fire Lord. While we're talking about Fire Lord Ozai, why was he revealed in an exposition scene? Like, really? This is the biggest and baddest villain in the entire show, and he gets revealed in a pointless exposition scene just to be included. Oh, and Shyamalan decides to include Enzola for some reason. I don't know why, but he does, so cool. This sparring scene right here was so pointless. For a movie that struggles with condensing and fitting everything in, why did they feel the need to include a sparring scene that did nothing for any of the characters? Later in the film, Ozai informs Zhao that no one should be hurting his son Zuko. But when Zuko is quote-unquote killed, there is literally no mention of Ozai's reaction at all. Everyone just moves on right away from this. This also makes no sense. Finally, when the moon spirit fish is killed, Aang gets a headache, and that made me laugh because it's stupid and childish. So yeah guys, this was me tearing apart the Last Airbender movie. If you guys enjoyed this video, please subscribe, check out my other videos. That's the most I can ask of you. Like, do anything else. Thanks for watching guys. I'm gonna peace out.